Adam Rowledge from Rowledge Associates, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Hospitality Talks. I'm glad we finally managed to get the Wi-Fi working enough to get it done. Just for those out there who might not know who you are or what you do, could you please just do a brief introduction?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for having me. So, as you said, my name is Adam Rowledge. I'm a keynote speaker and I run workshops and help businesses to achieve success through their people by finding and retaining the best talent they possibly can.
Thank you. And what's your background in the industry then, Adam? Because I know you from a previous life, obviously.
Indeed, yes. So, as of sort of a couple of years ago, I've been doing what I'm doing now, but prior to that I was a hotel general manager at the Georgian House in Pimlico and have had a nearly 20-year career in the hotel industry, working my way up through the ranks as many of us tend to do in the hospitality industry, and then had a really successful time at Georgian House and thought this is what I want to do next.
Excellent, fantastic. Thank you. So if we could just start with, the clients that you've been dealing with and of course your own business, what was the initial impact of the coronavirus situation and what were your initial thoughts as to where this was going?
Definitely. So, I mean, it was quite surreal, I suppose, to actually, it almost kind of happened in slow motion and fast forward at the same time, but over a period of really kind of 10 days in my own business, I saw work which just wasn't coming in anymore, but then actually cancelling, postponing with pretty much everything until the end of the year. In terms of clients, a lot of my clients are hotels, and I have a lot in retail as well. So hotels went from a special offers to try and get through this to how are we going to put a damage limitation sort of system in place, and how are we going to then now obviously think about coming out of that for the future.
Mm-hmm. And so currently all hotels in the UK, as far as I'm aware, are closed unless they are housing homeless or NHS staff and key workers. Am I correct in thinking that?
That's certainly my understanding as well. I don't know any of that fall outside of that, but I know that from having some conversations over the last couple of weeks with people that some are thinking now of actually reopening, even though we haven't had the official government guidance coming out yet. But certainly people are really starting to plan for the way forward, and I think that's a really real sign of where we are in this process now. A lot of it was very much damage limitation and how are we going to cope with this period of getting through the closure, but the mindset seems to definitely be changing now into the exit strategy, if you like, of our own in the hospitality industry. Mm-hmm.
And what do you think that exit strategy looks like then? How should hotel brands and any other hospitality that you have an opinion on, how should we be looking towards the future now? How should we be planning for the new normal and whatever comes next?
I think the first thing to do is we need to sort of get ourselves what I would call match fit. I think I certainly think of that for myself and using this time wisely to make sure I'm in the best possible position to come out of this sort of all guns blazing. Making sure that everything is in order in terms of the physical product, marketing, all of those kind of nuts and bolts really of how we run our business. That when we're day to day running the operation, sometimes we may not pay as much attention to, and really kind of almost likening this to a brand new opening of a business. Mm-hmm. I think whilst we don't know dates and exactly how some of the guidelines and restrictions are specifically going to affect us, I think really about preparing your team, making sure that we're even with people who are furloughed, that we're in constant communication, making sure their well-being is looked after, and that they are staying motivated and ready for when we get the notice. I think it is probably going to be quite short notice. Hotels certainly, I think, are going to be looking to open first. Michael Gove has already indicated that restaurants and pubs are going to be later, perhaps in the opening schedule, and I think more affects them in terms of the restrictions, more in terms of physical distancing and things like that. So really just thinking about how we're going to get the team motivated, make sure that the environment is a safe one for our guests to come into and be able to enjoy those things, but at the same time managing our business in the same way that we've been doing it during the closure, in terms of making sure we run really tight ships.
Do you think there's a danger that some people will have kind of got used to the whole, either working from home or if you're furloughed, not working and still getting some pay, and the whole idea of, getting dressed and getting up into London or into Manchester or wherever you work, is going to be quite a tough thing to get your head back round and to restart, I would imagine.
I think there's a little bit of that, and there's certainly a lot of conversation I've been having with people on that front. I think where perhaps people have previously wanted to work from home, this situation that we're in currently has demonstrated that it is a viable solution. And a lot of people are finding themselves being more productive at home. I think generally speaking, though, people will want to get back into the working environment. I think certainly from my experience of working in the hospitality industry, most of us are a fairly social bunch, and we want to be in that position where we can have the interaction, whether it's with colleagues or guests and customers. So I think that's going to be a really important thing. And one of the things that actually a lot of people are probably struggling with a little bit at the moment in the sort of confines of the lockdown that we have. And I think it's been really good to see a lot of companies who are doing some really positive things in trying to work through that in terms of the engagement they're having. I do think, though, that, you know, whilst it's not going to be back to normal, that the new normal won't look massively different, but certainly I think there's a lot of lessons been learned about how we can do business more effectively without having to travel the length and breadth of the country. And you know, the technology that we're using now has been around for a number of years, but it's only really the situation that we've kind of been forced into that we're actually being able to use that, you know, for the not just for the benefit of our own business, but also for things like the environment. And you know, a lot of unnecessary journeys are certainly going to be saved, and time more productively spent in not traveling.
So thinking about, you know, that phrase that you just used, the new normal, that we're hearing bandied around almost as much as lockdown and unprecedented, and all of the other words that we are now into our day-to-day language. What does the new normal, and I'm kind of asking you for your opinion on the hotel side more than anything, because obviously that's where your background and your skill and your experience is. You know, what does that new normal look like? What are going to be the watch outs? What's going to change? And what do you think we're going to go running back to because we miss?
So I think I was thinking about this quite a lot actually over the weekend, and I think people are going to be a lot more cautious, and I think that's why it's going to be really important for businesses to not only to take the measures that they're going to ensure the safety of their guests and customers, but to be really proactive in communicating that. And there's been some really good examples of that from non-hospitality businesses during this time. I know I get emails pretty much every other day from Sainsbury's about the measures they're taking. I think that level of reassurance is going to be really important. But I think hospitality is something which is really ingrained in our culture. You know, whether it's going to the pub for a drink or to a restaurant for a meal, and whilst the demand will be certainly lower, I do think that's something that people are going to want to get back to doing safely as soon as possible. So I think what we're going to see is a very gradual build-up of that, and a lot of it is obviously going to be then linked to whether there's a second peak or anything of that nature. But I do think that it's something which will take time, and I think that the measures that the government are going to have to take to support businesses through that are going to be key. Because as you know, I think we're all aware, some businesses aren't unfortunately going to make it through this time. But in order to protect the industry, that kind of phased approach is definitely going to be necessary.
And I think the whole idea of the physical distancing and how that can affect the industry, and I think that's a big fear that a lot of people have got. And certainly I've been talking about it with our clients, which is, if we open up but people can't be anywhere near each other, then we're not going to get enough people in across the doorstep in order to make the money that we need to make to stay open. So it's better to wait rather than open prematurely.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the sort of the paradox, really, isn't it? But yeah, we would definitely be interested. I've seen some pictures of some restaurants already that have set their restaurants up with sort of 2 meter distancing between tables, and debate about whether the table should remain but just be left vacant and that kind of thing. And conference rooms, I think the meetings industry is definitely going to be very much affected by this as well. So it is a challenge, and especially because we have so many independent businesses in our sector who operate out of quite small premises, and as you've just mentioned, the profit margins are quite tight, so not being able to do the numbers that they need to do is going to be a big challenge. And I think that's where we're going to need to see adaptation of business models in the way that a lot of companies have obviously not been able to serve any guests in their bricks and mortar at the moment, and they've adapted some of their model to do takeaways or delivery and that kind of thing. I think it's going to be another channel that people are going to need to explore, really, in order to make their businesses viable whilst those distancing measures are in place.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic, Adam. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm glad we finally managed to make it work. And thank you very much. And I wish you the best in the future. And I look forward to seeing you in real life at the other end of all of this.
Definitely. You too. Thanks very much, Katie. Take care.
Look after yourself. Thank you.